grunt emitted a high-pitched scream, sharp and unnatural, like rusted metal dragged across stones as I buried my hunting knife deep into its throat. The sound cut through the dense air, setting every nerve in my body on edge. Its flesh gave way with a sickening squelch, and a spray of black, tar-like blood splattered across my coat. The stench hit me like a hammer, sour, rancid, and clinging, but I didn't flinch. I couldn't. My arm jerked upward, twisting the blade to silence the thing for good. Silence. But it wouldn't last. That scream would draw others. I just knew it. I gripped the handle of my knife and yanked it free, feeling the resistance as it slid through muscle and bone. The grunt's body convulsed, its limbs jerking spasmodically before it crumpled at my feet. The Bayou was alive tonight, more alive than it had any right to be. Inhuman moans and choked cries slithered through the thick, humid air, a grim symphony of the damned. Shadows shifted in the tree line, accompanied by the sluggish scrape of rotting feet dragging on the mud, announcing the arrival of more undead. They were slower than the average man, clumsy too. Their decaying limbs twitched and stumbled, their limbs jerking like marionettes pulled by an unsteady hand. But I knew better than to underestimate them. That's how they get you. One moment of weakness, one misplaced step, and you're done for. In moments like these, I sometimes wonder why we even bother. The world is damned already, so why keep pushing on? Why risk everything, only to be devoured by those who once stood beside us, or starve to death in the shadows? Maybe it's instinct. Maybe that's all there is now. Desperation disguised as choice. My will to survive hasn't shattered. Not yet. I guess that's also why I took this contract in the first place. Some primal drive that refuses to let me die, even when logic screams to give up. It's been days since I've had so much as a crumb of bread. My pockets are so light they barely hold enough coin for that tasteless excuse for soup. Simply put, it's flavored water. This contract? It seemed simple when I took it. Kill grunts, bring their heads back for study. But nothing in the Bayou is ever simple. Not anymore. I glanced at the corpse at my feet. Its skin hung in loose gray folds, the sickly sheen of decay reflecting in the moonlight. Sometimes I wondered what they were before. Farmers? Shop owners? A father or a bother? I shoved the thought away. Didn't matter. They weren't human anymore. My grip tightened on the knife, the slick handle black ooze and swamp water. More were coming. I could hear them. The air grew heavier, oppressive, as if the Bayou itself wanted me dead. I moved cautiously, each step a struggle against the muck, which seemed eager to pull me under. A rustling in the nearby bushes drew my attention. My hand instinctively reached for the revolver at my hip. The worn grip always is a familiar comfort. I scanned the darkness, every sense on high alert. Then, a large shadow shifted among the trees, growing bigger as it stumbled forward. It suddenly lurched into the dim moonlight, emerging from behind a twisted tree, its bloated body swaying awkwardly on legs too short and fragile to bear its weight. It was grotesquely fat, not the usual skeletal bodies of the dead I encountered. Perhaps this one had feasted on fine meats, sat at long tables laden with food while the rest of the world starved, even when it began its descent into ruin. Its fine clothes, now rotting and torn, clung to its decaying flesh, golden rings and sparkling jewelry, hints of wealth that meant nothing in its state. There was no mistaking the lingering arrogance in its posture, an unnatural stubbornness even in death, as if it still believed itself untouchable. Its sunken eyes, surrounded by folds of sagging, mottled skin, were locked on me with the hunger that had long devoured any trace of the man it once was. The only thing left is the lumbering beast that stumbled toward me with its swollen belly jostling side to side with each step. The irony wasn't lost on me. Those who had taken the most in life now wandered the Bayou, just as empty as the rest. I squeezed the trigger. The sound tore through the swamp, the sharp crack of the revolver echoing like a curse in the still air. The bullet struck near its neck, but the creature kept coming, staggering forward with a slow, relentless gait. Grunts don't fall unless you hit their heads. Anywhere else? You just make them angrier. Damn it, I muttered under my breath. I was too tired, as if the weight of my body was too much. I dropped to a knee, bracing the revolver with both hands. One bullet left, my arms steady as I lined up the sights. Pulled the trigger again. The grunt's head snapped back as the bullet pierced its skull with a sickening thud. It toppled over, the splash of its fall swallowed by the thick muck of the swamp. Perhaps using the gun was a mistake, as if the shriek of the first grunt didn't attract enough attention. I could hear more groans heading my direction. They always headed towards the noise. Time to go, I whispered under my breath. 2 heads should be enough to satisfy that crazy doc. Wasting no time, I slid my revolver back into its holster and pulled my hunting knife free. Kneeling over the first grunt's lifeless body, I steadied myself. The quicker I finish, the sooner I can move on and collect, I thought, trying to ignore the unease creeping up my spine. I grabbed the corpse by its greasy hair and yanked its head. The smell hit me like a punch to the gut, a thick, suffocating stench of rot that made my stomach churn. I gagged, but forced it down. The blade bit into the decaying flesh, dull at first as it sliced through the swollen skin, then deeper as I sawed into the muscle. Black goo, thick and sticky like tar, oozed out in sluggish rivulets, splattering over my hands and clothes. I'm going to have to burn these rags when I get back. There's no getting rid of that smell, no matter how much you scrub. Rotting flesh smell never leaves you. It stank more than usual, a rancid mixture of rot and something else, something unnatural. I glanced over my shoulder. Nothing yet. But they were close. I could feel it. The blade scraped bone, the grinding sound making my teeth clench. I twisted the knife, trying to speed things up, but the head wouldn't come loose. Damn it! Come on! I put all my weight into it, jerking the knife back and forth until the spine gave way with a sickening crack, and the head came free. Blood, if you could still call it that, splattered across my chest, cold and congealed, the texture of thickened oil. One down, one more to go. I moved to the second body, its bloated form slumped face down when it fell. For a moment, I debated rolling it over but decided against it. Its bulk made it a struggle to handle. The dead weight was awkward and unwieldy. The effort would only waste precious time. Instead, I grabbed it by the head, the greasy strands of hair slick against my fingers, and pulled it back to expose the neck. The skin was thick, the rolls of fat bulging around the base, almost obscuring the neck entirely. As I pressed the blade against it, I expected resistance. The struggle I'd had with the other head-wiry, muscular frame was still fresh in my mind, but to my surprise, the knife glided through. The fat, oily and pliable gave way like butter, the blade slipping through the layers with unnerving ease. This one was softer, easier. Maybe it was all the grease in its flesh, slicking the blade and making the cut disturbingly smooth. Even so, the stench was overpowering, worse than before. A thick, rancid aroma seeped from the exposed flesh, heavier somehow. The black goo that oozed from the wound was no less repulsive, spraying over my hands again as I continued. The sounds of the other grunts were getting closer. Low groans, dragging feet, the snapping of branches under heavy, rotting limbs. I sawed at the neck with hurried strokes. My hands, slick with gore, caused the blade to slip more than once. Breathe. Focus. But my pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out the approaching threat. The knife hit a tendon, and I felt it snap under the pressure, spraying more of that black ichor across my sleeve. Closer now. I could hear them, groaning, shambling, searching. Finally, the second head is almost free, but not without resistance. The neck was swollen, making the cut uneven. I tugged the head loose with one last pull, my hands trembling as I stuffed it into the brown weaved sack alongside the first. I quickly wiped my knife on my already ruined pants and stood, my heart pounding. I sheathed the knife. The sound of the grunts was almost on me now. Their low, guttural moans were closer. Too close. My breath caught in my throat as I slung the sack with the heads over my shoulder. No time to linger. The stench clung to me, thick as the blood that soaked through the sack to my clothes. I could burn these rags, but the memory? That's something that would stick. Now, I had to run. About to head on my way, when a low growl made my blood run cold. How had I not heard it before? Too focused on decapitating the undead. The grunt came at me from the side, only a couple feet away, faster than I expected, its dead eyes burning with a twisted hunger. I spun around, drawing my revolver in one swift motion. I squeezed the trigger. Click. Nothing. My heart sank as the reality hit me. The grunt slammed into me with its full weight, driving the air from my lungs and knocking me to the ground. I hit the muddy floor hard, the cold muck soaking through my clothes. Panic overtook reason. I pulled the trigger again, and again. The chamber was empty. The same hollow click mocked me as the creature bore down on me. Its jaws snapped, broken yellowed teeth gnashing inches from my face as I shoved against its chest with my free hand. With no other options, I twisted the revolver in my hand and swung it hard, smashing the butt of the gun against the grunt's skull. It barely reacted. A sudden lunge brought its snapping teeth dangerously close, and in the struggle, the revolver was knocked from my hand. I heard it hit the mud with a dull thud, swallowed by the muck. Its teeth snapped inches from my face as I shoved it back with both hands. But the grunt was stronger, far stronger than it should have been. Its clawed fingers raked at my arms, trying to pull me closer. Desperation kicked in. With one arm still holding it back, I fumbled at my belt for my knife. My fingers closed around the hilt, and I yanked it free. In one swift motion, I slashed at its arm. With a final, desperate effort, I braced myself and shoved the blade upward, driving it through the bottom of its jaw and into its brain. The grunt convulsed, its body jerking violently before it finally went limp, collapsing on top of me. I pushed the corpse off, gasping for air as I scrambled to my feet. I could hear them, the others, closing in. No time to lose. Run, I thought to myself, my body frozen in place waiting for my command. I rushed toward the sack, grabbing it from the ground in one swift motion. Its weight pulled hard against my arms. I swung it over my shoulder, the gruesome contents shifting inside with a nauseating squelch. As I settled the sack on my back, it slapped hard against my shoulders, each step sending the severed heads bouncing against my spine, their weight dragging me down. As I sprinted away, the underbrush clawed at my legs, slowing me down as I pushed through the thick swamp. Each breath came harder, my legs straining to keep pace. But running was the only choice. I could hear the infected chasing me, their moans echoing through the bayou. My hunting knife was useless against the horde that would catch up any minute. The dense swamp made every step a battle. Low-hanging branches whipped at my face, twisted roots threatened to trip me, and the wet ground sucked at my boots, pulling me down. My lungs ached with the effort, but I couldn't stop. The groans faded slightly as I ran, but they were still too close for comfort. I didn't dare look back. I pushed forward until my legs screamed in protest, the burn in my chest turning into sharp, stabbing pain. I couldn't keep at it. My pace faltered, each breath a ragged gasp, and eventually, I was forced to a slow walk. Just keep moving forward. One foot in front of the other, through the fog, through the endless stretch of trees and muck. I didn't stop even though I couldn't feel my legs anymore. The sounds of the bayou faded into a dull roar, and then everything went black. End of diary entry. This marks the end of Chapter 1 of my upcoming novel, Tales of the Hunt. Set in the haunting world of the 1800s, where witchcraft and an undead plague have reshaped humanity's fate. This story follows a hunter's journey through a harsh and unforgiving landscape. Survival is only the beginning. Uncovering the truth may be the key to saving what's left of the world. Follow me for more updates sneak peeks, and exclusive content as the story unfolds. Your support means everything,